It's been 12 hours and 21 days since you took your love away. Grief is such a silly bird, and this precious angel came into my life before Baba. It's hard to believe that. But I just had a moment with Baba and I was upset. When she started to get really sick, she came to me when she could still walk, and I was having a meltdown. I was having a breakdown because I hadn't been sleeping, and caring for her was very intense. My birth mother, I have no idea who was with her, if she suffered. They say she passed away peacefully in her bed. I always felt that was how my mom was going to go. I had hoped she was going to... I feel like my mom had an option to live into her 80s or die when she did, and I think she decided to die because I was like, my mom's going to outlive everybody. I just have this really interesting feeling. And one of the last times I talked to her, she was very... my stepfather, her husband, you know, of many, many, many years, decades, I don't know how many years, I think 30, they were together, and I just felt like I knew she wanted to live alone because she had never been alone, not really, and so I knew she wanted to do that, so it doesn't surprise me that she died, like, 3.5 years after him. Like, she probably was like, oh, that's enough, like, that's all I needed, you know, to have my freedom. And I don't know. Every time my mom wants to show me certain things I'll look at, and other things I'm not ready, you know? So, I wanted to go see her. I wanted to go be with her when I heard that she was ill, and I kept trying to change things and arrange my life and whatever to do that. But Baba proceeded to get more sick. It wasn't an accident. She did it at the same time because she knew I'd choose her over my mom. Where some people would be like, dude, I chose my mom. It's like, no, I chose my cat. I chose my cat of 13 years. Yeah, I chose my cat. Absolutely. Um, be in a place where I'm going to feel miserable and uncomfortable and be judged. And, you know, my mom was, she was Southern Baptist Christian and thought I was the devil. Why would I mean, I knew she would have people around her. That was not an issue. She didn't die alone, you know, like, it wasn't like that. She didn't need me anymore. It was kind of weird. It was almost like the last time I talked to my mom, she like confessed all of her sins to me, and it was really bizarre and really weird, and nobody in my family knows that. My grandma did the same thing to me. My grandma did the exact same thing to me. Except for my grandma was literally on her deathbed. She died 4 days later. But my mom, it was like we were on the phone. And the last time I talked to her was the day that my stepdad died. I had already started like pulling away from them. And we were on the phone for 6 hours. It was intense. It was crazy. Like, it took me like 4 days to recover from that phone call. And then she proceeded, even though I told her that I needed space and that, like, if you don't hear from me, don't call me, you know. Even if someone dies, she said. I said, even if someone dies, Mom. And she's like, you don't want to know if somebody dies. I'm like, no. I'm like, and at that time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to cut my mom out forever, or I was really getting back into reading. And part of it was I needed to be done with my family, but also it was like, I was hopeful that once I finished my books, in some weird way, I had deluded myself into believing that if I could just separate myself from my friends and my family and everybody, that was influencing me in a negative way, it's like for some reason I had this belief that I was, sorry, I'm looking for tissue. I I told myself, that I was going to be able to, I thought I'd like, because the book had been therapy for years for me. We have different forms of therapy. And so I had like somehow like told myself that if I could, just get away from everybody for a certain amount of time, that I would work it out through the book and then I'd be fine. I'd be able to talk to them again. And then one time I had said to Alder, do you think I'm going to have to stop talking to everybody, even my mom? And he's like, even your mom? And I think there was a part of me that got frustrated with him too over the last few years because one by one I started to release people, and my last person was my mom. And he was very selective in who he was releasing. And I think I had some resentment because I always felt like we were kind of like a team, one for like he, Bubba, and I, we were like the three musketeers, all for one and one for all. And so, we were like a well-oiled machine. It seemed like the only time we had cogs in the wheel were when one of us was like diverting from the plan or diverting from the energy that we're meant to face and work on. And that's what I feel like all of last year was. And I had said something to the dragons like, "Boy, you guys seriously, like," I'm like, "I don't know where I come from, but I'm one tough ass bitch." I'm like, I don't know. I'm like looking back to like an older version of myself, and I'm like, I don't know if she would have been able to handle this. I'm almost 100% sure she wouldn't. I would have probably started drinking again or something. But I've just changed so much. Sorry, just keeps running. But I've changed so much. And I've grown so much and really have understood over the last decade what it means to mature instead of just getting old. We're all going to age. All of our avatars are going to age, no matter what happens, right? But we decide, hold on. Hold on. Okay. Nobody needs to see that. I'm like, I don't know why. Because I don't care. Because sometimes it's just taking care of my avatar. Like I don't know. Anyway, I have such a different connection to my, like I used to be so connected to the way I looked and being perfect, and I just don't anymore. I do in certain times, I guess, but anyway, I digress. It's been seconds for you, but I took a few minutes to just kind of like compose myself. But yeah, I mean, maturing means that you start to see things for what they are and accept them and work through them. Avoiding things are what we do as kids, right? Like we don't want to deal with something. I mean, and that goes into our adulthood as well. I mean, of course, you can gain that energy in adulthood. I'm just saying, I know a lot of people that starts from childhood, right? And it starts from being loved, from being accepted, from, I mean, I can go on and on and on. Sorry, I put this thing here and I didn't plan on this. I was just like totally crying and just like having a moment with Bubba, and it made me realize like that avoidance is a real thing. And when I was crying thinking about Bubba, she reminded me that when she was on her deathbed, she said, and I, getting back to that story, Bubba and I were always physically connected. She was always sitting on me, laying on me, sleeping on me. Even though she didn't like to be touched a lot in her older years, she definitely like let me like squeeze her more. I remember saying one time, I'm like, I hope when she gets to be like older, she'll like really let us like play with her and like pet her and stuff like that. And Elder's like, no, she won't. And it's interesting because I realize now these last few years that she's let me touch her more and pet her more. That was it. That was what I envisioned, but I wanted like this, where I was like those of you know Baba, if I went like that, she'd be like, "Get the fuck!" You know what I mean? Like cats are just a different breed. Dogs are like, okay, I love you, or they're like, I love you too, but like not. I mean, cats can be loving. I'm just saying, like Bubba was like the stereotypical energy of like a cat, like a badass mofo. Don't, I'll call you, don't call me. You know what I mean? She was just so magical and she made me laugh every day and she just brought me so much joy. And her physical presence has been noticeably absent, even when she's here. So she keeps bringing my mind back to that time when I started to realize she wasn't going to get better. She tried. We both did. That's why I gave her a channel. I was realizing she wants me to revamp the channel. She's so funny. I was going through some stuff and I'm like, I have so much footage of her. It's unbelievable. Thousands and thousands of pictures and video. Thousands. I said, I could probably keep your channel going for the rest of my life. She's like, you absolutely could. And I started to realize, and I started to realize, nothing lasts forever. And judge me as you will, but I have been finding chunks of her fur around, and I was really upset because I had this piece, this chunk that had fallen off of her. It was so beautiful. It was so soft. It was precious. And I kept it because it looked like it was in the shape of a heart, and it had the black and the white, which, she was mostly dark, and then she had white. Her fur was actually like almost like a burnt reddish black. Like she just had this, in some lights she was black as night, and sometimes when the sun would shine on her, she almost looked like a rusty black. She was so cool. Her body, she's still here, but yeah, her avatar was really beautiful. Her eyes, you guys all know. When I was going through, so I had this for a long time. It was so soft. It was like a rabbit's foot, you know what I mean? Like something that someone would be like, what, that's pretty. What is this from, And I felt like it was something that I wanted to put out, that if somebody wanted to touch it and like say hi to Baba, So when I was going through my attachment phase, I threw it away. Something told me to keep it, and I didn't. And then when she was molting, last year, she had chunks everywhere, and I feel like she kept trying to like give them to me. And I just kept, because I was in denial. And I think I thought I still had that chunk, but I went through, unless it's somewhere else, I'm like, I can't find it. So as I've been cleaning, I've been like finding just, where's one? I'm like, where's one? I'm like, is there one that's close? I don't even know. I can't see. Here's one I found in the grass outside. And that's me. I tore a lot of dirt off of it. I'm going to wash it, but I was like, it's Baba! And some people might think that's creepy, and some people might be like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean? But not that I'd ever clone her. It's not about that, but I was not going to stuff her either. There definitely were moments where I was like, what should I do with her? Should I stuff her and keep her around? But then I was like, no, it's just fucking creepy because, like, she was an entity. So one of the last times, getting back to it again, I didn't know in that moment that was going to be the last time I was going to really hold her like that. And it was the way she almost like limped over into my arms, like, I'm so sorry. And we both just reeked of urine. And it was just like, it had been a really rough week. And I just like kind of fell in a heap on the floor. And I think it was the night before Thanksgiving. That's when things started to turn, because I just yelled at her for months for not doing what she normally does, or not, and it was like, looking back on it now, I realized what I was doing. Like I was I was just like, no. I was like a little kid that's like, no, you're not gonna die. Not on my watch. I'm like, I am a powerful witch. There were nights where I was arguing with spirit where I'm like, I want her for more. They're like, no. I'm like, I want her for more. I'm like, it's my life. It's my familiar. They're like, she's an entity too. You don't get to decide. But I should have known because the way I held her and the way we were. And that's when I started to realize how skinny she was. And I was like, she's not gonna make it out of here alive. So I haven't really talked about it or posted videos of her. I started to. Even like the date, like her announcement videos are so lame. I would have done so much better for her. I almost feel like in a way like she got cheated, you know? Because I was like, she deserves better. Also, I took like so many videos of her. Sorry. I took so many videos of her at the end. Like, so many. And I'm like looking back at it going, what the fuck was I thinking? Why am I taking videos of her as she's like dying? I'm like, would I take videos of a dying person? I'm like, I think I would, because we still were trying to make videos. We were still trying to, like the last video I made with her, I knew it. I knew it. It was the day she died. I didn't know. I thought she was going to make it. Hold on. So I wasn't delusional, like off my rocker delusional. I just assumed, I realized looking back that she came to me in the year of the dragon. And so when she started to get sick, I was like, oh my God, she's going to leave with the dragons. So I thought she's either going to leave with the dragons or she's going to hang on until our 13th anniversary, 13-year anniversary, which was just a few days after Valentine's Day. So she made it past, from the year of the dragon to the year of the snake. She made it past the new moon in Aquarius. I'm like, oh, dude, she's staying for another moon cycle because she barely, even Alder was like, has she asked to look at the moon or anything? Because we know she loved the moon. She was probably a moon day baby like me because we were so connected. I'm boiling water, but I've got lavender in there right now. Wish you guys can smell this. I've been like rubbing Sherwood with lavender so that when I hug him, it smells nice, and calms me down. But yeah, so when she started to go downhill, when I woke up on the morning of the 31st, and she's like, she only asked me to call 2 people, and I called those 2 people, and I messaged those 2 people and said, hey, I think Baba's going to tomorrow, because the next day was in bulk. It was on the 31st. And it's weird. That's how much in denial I know, because you guys know I'm all about fucking numerology. I'm all about like the signs and everything. It's like, of course, like it's on the 31st and she's like gasping for breath. I'm like, I don't think that's going to be the day. I'm born on the 13th. Like she dies on the 31st. Like, I mean, I'm like, no, she's going to make it. She's going to make it to in bulk at least. Tomorrow's in bulk, plant the seeds. I'm like, she's going to die. We're going to take her. It's going to be like, no. I didn't think she'd die at night. No, excuse me. I thought she'd die at night, but I thought she'd die like in her sleep. Like, I just kept envisioning myself like waking up and being like, morning, Baba, how you doing? What's good? What do you need? Kind of thing. Like we were in a hospice, so it was just always like the second I woke up, it was like, I don't even think about, some mornings I would be like, it's 11 o'clock. I've been up since 3 in the morning. I haven't had any water, like, I mean, it was that, kind of like just, I was just thinking about her just 100% the whole time. And so it's just so interesting to me, like looking back on the whole thing, how she had set this up from the beginning, even with Sherwood, because today she made me realize, like, I've actually had Sherwood longer than I had Papa. So get this. Sherwood came to me on Thanksgiving. The Thanksgiving before Bubba came to me right after Valentine's Day, when I was like, I can't do this by myself. I'm alone. I need, an animal or a person. And I was breaking up with my boyfriend at the time when I found Sherwood. It was outside of his house that I found Sherwood. I thought Sherwood was a dead animal on the side of the road. It was pouring rain. I was living in Portland, Oregon, and he lived in this really old house. And he was on the top floor, like the attic part, and he had a balcony. And we would sit out there and smoke cigarettes and drink. And, hold on. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And there was this cat that we used to see in the neighborhood. Everybody knew it was a really famous cat. Didn't belong to anybody, but it was everybody's cat. It's like it slept on this bird. Like like it loved it. It loved it. Had a great fucking life. And I was sick to my stomach. I was so sick to my stomach. It was really late too. It was like 11 or 12 at night. And I just remember like there was a light. There was like a street light. And I could kind of see that there was something. Imagine, you can see how big this is. So this is laying in the road and it's pouring rain. From where I was like, that's an animal. I'm like, there's no way that's not a fucking animal. And I was like, go look. And he wouldn't. I was like starting to cry because I was like, oh no. I'm like, I can't remember the cat's name. I'm like, I think it's this cat. And he's like, well, he's like, well, if it's dead. And I go, what if it's not dead though? I'm like, what if it's not dead? I'm like, what if we came out here? I'm like, we need to find out. And he wouldn't go. And it was perfect because I was meant to go. I was even like in my, like, barely dressed and like barefoot, and it's fucking November in Portland. And I ran downstairs and I waited and I kind of like was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And then as I got closer, I'm like, what kind of animal is that? Because I'm seeing these big feet, because they're like little beanbags. I'm like trying to figure out what the fuck this thing is. I'm like, man, this thing got fucked up. Like, and I was like, this thing's jacked. And I definitely was like, it's not breathing. Like, it's dead. And we fucking went out there and got closer, and it was Sherwood. I looked down and I'm like, you're like, and I was like, oh my God. And I just remember picking him up and he was sopping wet. And I was like, oh my God. And I said, who do you belong to? I'm like, who got rid of you? I had this one stuffed animal. And it's funny because I didn't realize then that I was a medium, but I had these visions of it being like a guy giving a girl the stuffed animal and then like them getting a fight and him lighting it on fire and throwing it out the window. And it was another one. I found another. It's like I had a house full of real strays, and then I had a house of like stray stuffed animals that I would find on the road. It's crazy shit. So his name was Scar, as you can imagine. I don't know what happened to Scar. I think he gave him to an old boyfriend. But this one I was really upset because I actually like was a nerd and put pictures. Everybody's like, dude, you're being really weird about this. I'm like, no, I'm like, if it's someone, I go, this is a big stuffed animal. You're gonna miss this. If this is outside, I'm like, something, some kid is missing this somewhere. But nobody claimed it. Nobody claimed it. And I washed him. He was all fucking jacked up. And my friend's like, put him in a pillowcase and whatever. So now I've had him for 13 years. But when Bubba was sick, that time that she crawled into my arms, I just held her and we both cried. And I just kept hearing her say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, she was just like so apologetic. It was like the sweetest thing in the world. And I just held her tighter and she let me. And that's when I kind of knew, because we sat like that for a long time. And I cradled her like this. And I just was like, I love you, Mama. Bubba had her things, but I'll tell you something. Almost every morning when I'd be going to the bathroom, she'd run in and it was the only time she'd let me pick her up and put her in my lap. I don't know why. I don't know what that attachment. So, I rescued her after she was, already grown. So maybe the person that had her as a kitten used to bring in the bathroom with her. I have no idea, but she loved that. And she would let me hold her like this when we were on the toilet, and then she'd go, Meh, when she was like done, because she had had enough. And I started to realize that she hadn't done that in a long time. And like, there were bits and pieces in the last few months of her life that she did last things like that. There was one morning and she did that. She came to the bathroom and I picked her up and I held her. And I knew that was gonna be the last time I was gonna hold her like that. She just kept giving me like these little lasts. So when I was holding her like that, she said, hug Sherwood. And I was like, what? And like a week before, I was getting ready to go to the laundromat, and I kept getting this like, you need to wash something in this bag. And I had a bag of my stuffed animals and like things I don't use on a regular basis, you know, that didn't have to go to the laundromat. They weren't filthy. They just needed to be washed. Um, and when she led me to Sherwood, I was like, I don't get it. Like, what the fuck? Why? You know? And then I thought maybe she wanted me to donate him. I had no idea. But then after that, after I held her that last time, she said, I came to you then. I was like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I'm Sherwood. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? She said, that day you rescued me in the street. She's like, that was me. I said, then why did I feel a masculine energy? I always felt like Sherwood was a boy. And Bubba was very masculine, even though she was, in fact, everybody thought she was a boy cat. All the rescue people thought she was a boy cat. It wasn't until they actually did an examination on her that he's like, it's a girl, you know, and we all started laughing. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, she's got to be Maine Coon. He's like, because she is healthy as a horse. He's like, she's not fat. She's healthy. She's strong. He's like, but she's a big girl. He's like, she's a big cat. He's like, she might be mixed with like Ragdoll or Himalayan or something. He's like, but he's like, she definitely has Maine Coon in her. He's like, I can see certain traits about her that are definitely Maine Coon that are indistinguishable. And he said that in that area, that Maine Coons were massive, huge, like the number one cat in that area, you know. So he said she was most likely a stray. He's like, he's like, she's really healthy. He goes, either somebody took her in or she's just really been taking good care of herself. And he was like, her teeth are small. So he's like, she could be a year or she could be 3 years. He goes, if she was weaned too early, he's like, her teeth will never get bigger. And they never did. And towards the end of her life, she wouldn't let me get into her mouth. I kept trying to I tried to take her to the vet so many times. I literally made appointments, 2 different appointments with the vet. And the first one, she was like, nah, like barricading her. She's like, I'm not going. Her claws were like at the door. I'm like, Baba, I'm like, come on. She didn't fuck me up, which was, you know, a blessing. I was so grateful. But it was no joke, you know. She was just like, bitch, I ain't going. So don't try it. Don't try it. And I was like, what the fuck? I was gonna pause my video, but I was like, you can come in here with me. So this is what I do. So I'm in the middle of packing. We're moving again. I think I might have told you guys that we were moving again. I can tell you now, I don't know when you'll see this, but I can tell you now in real time. It's February 22nd, but hold on. I have to concentrate because it's hot, and I always say, thank you, water, thank you, fire, thank you, lavender. It takes a very steady hand. It's like operation. Depending on the day, I could do this 3 to 5 times a day. It can be very, overwhelming. Anyway, we're actually moving to another property that our landlord owns. He owns a lot of different properties. Long story short, he wasn't sure about sharing his space with anybody, but we've been here for almost a year and we've like proved ourselves or whatever. And so he's like, you know, he actually gave us almost a better deal on the new place than we have here. It's compensated, like it's the same, but it's going to be nice because we'll be able to really focus on what we both need to do individually and together. As of right now, I feel like Alder and I are still meant to move forward together, and he feels the same. We haven't talked about our full relationship yet, but we both feel like we just work better together. It's just, I don't know if it's permanent. I don't know. I literally don't know. Uh, but I believe that we are meant to. I believe our love is very real. I just think the 50s are very, very tough. Every decade is tough. I've lived through them so far, up to now. I don't know what the 60s, 70s, and beyond, but I can only imagine. You know, this is why people do start to like have like second thoughts and like I don't want to have regrets and start taking better care of themselves because they're like, oh, that hurts, or I can't do that the way I used to. And especially if you're not taking care of yourself, like that's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. I got, yes, I have tissue on demand. Okay. So basically, Bubba's just given me so much, and Alder as well. And he and I had a really good conversation recently. Actually, the last few conversations, the last few times we've hung out together, it's been very enlightening and hopeful. And that's basically what we needed. So, yeah. So Bubba is like, I've been with you since you were born. I'm one of your spirit guides. She's like, and then I've come to you in different forms. But when she was like trying to explain to me, like, I've been with you since you found Sherwood, I was living with a roommate. I couldn't have an animal. And as much as I love my sister, like, she was like more than a roommate. She was my sister, my friend. We totally like have connections and other lives together kind of friend. And they needed to be on their own. I needed to be on my own. We were together when we both needed somebody, and we got through it together. But when I found Sherwood, she and I had gotten into a fight, and I was gonna have to move out that week we were fighting. So it's kind of interesting because I moved out on New Year's Eve, and I had my other stuffed animals, but like Sherwood was like my new bestie at that time. And then my landlord told me I can get a cat. And so I started looking at cats. And then right after Valentine's Day, I was like super depressed because my boyfriend and I had broken up, the guy who I was with when I found Sherwood. But he would still come to my apartment. Like, we were very lonely. We were just very lonely drunks. We were both just very sad, sad people, and had really good sex. So, sometimes I'd call him drunk, sometimes he'd call me drunk. But when I got Bubba, the more I got close to Bubba, the less I wanted him around. And like, Bubba didn't really like him. And so it was kind of interesting. She was my protector from day one, and for 13 years, man. I mean, she was literally with me for like 12 years and like 11 months and like so many days. That's why I'm like, it'll always be 13 years. I'm not going to tell people, well, actually, she was with me for blah, blah, blah. It's like, she was like 2 weeks fucking shy of like, just to like 2.5 weeks shy. Oh yeah, we're getting these big winds around here. So that was just really powerful. So when I couldn't hold her anymore, when I couldn't hug her anymore, she would say, hug Sherwood. And she said, when I'm not here, when I leave, she's like, I want you to hug him. And I thought she was just saying like an emotional support stuffy, you know, just like people have emotional support animals. Like we just, you know, a lot of us, especially light workers, you know, we're very playful. You know, we know intrinsically that love and playfulness is like that elevated energy that is just where we come from. But the density of the third dimensional earth of the like judgment and you're too old and who cares about your inner child and all that stuff, like just like when we were children, like grow up, it was always like grow up, grow up, grow up. And it's like, well, you know what, maybe it's not about growing up, you know, maybe it's about growing towards, you know, your soul, to, you know, keeping that childlike essence, but not, you know, staying in the mental state of a child in terms of like responsibility and maturity and all of those things that come together. So today I was drawn to, you know, obviously I didn't return people's comments forever on my channels because I just couldn't do it. And the ones with Bubba for sure I didn't even look at. But today I was drawn to respond to them, and I started hearing Nothing Compares to You in my head. And even though Prince wrote it, I think I'll forever just have the connection to her version, because that's the version that I heard on the radio. I remember the first time I heard Prince's version of Nothing Compares to You, and I was like, I didn't know Prince did this. I'm like, what year is this? And I researched it. I'm like, oh, he wrote it? I'm like, I didn't know it wasn't Sinead O'Connor's song. I just, you know, I remember watching Saturday Night Live when she ripped the fucking Pope's picture on the I remember that. Like I remember being at my friend's house. Like I remember it like it was yesterday. And just all these rebels, all these, you know, people. By the way, you'll see me do things like I used to do with Bubba, because look at, even remember Bubba had white right here. Sometimes these little eyes, I'm telling you, Bubba says hi. If you can't see her in here, maybe look a little bit longer, but Bubba says hi. He has the sweetest eyes ever. Or she, I guess they. But I was like, nothing compares to you, Bubba. Like, even though I love Sherwood, I was like, nothing compares, man. But the greatest thing, the greatest gift I've been given through this whole process is the alone time. I really needed it. Alder needed it. We both needed to like figure out what it was like. I mean, we had fallen into these roles that we had both always wanted to play, and it was good, and they served a purpose, and we needed those roles to be there. But we're not the same people, and Bubba is not here anymore. Like I don't have to think about it's only in the last like few days that I have really, besides her anniversary yesterday, the 3 weeks she's been gone, it feels like she's been gone for 22 days, and it literally feels like years to me. Years. Every day has been different. And I have been dealing with it, but I've been trying not to look at it. I'm like, I have to stay focused right now. We're moving. Like we have to, you know, because our landlord came to us, and it was so, I felt so bad for him, because the day that he told me that we had to move was the day that I was like, yeah, Bubba's, I don't know if it was the day she died or it was the day before. And I was like, she's not good. Like she's not going to make it. And he's like, oh no, I'm sorry. Like, I think he was like, fuck, I'm so sorry. Because you know, he'd ask about her whenever he was around or whatever. And he saw her one last time. In fact, I said, do you want to come say goodbye to her? And he's like, no. He's like, he's so honest. He goes, no, I saw her already when he saw her last time, and she was way worse than that. He had seen her a few weeks before, and she was, at this point, like, she was, you know, we were like hours away. And he said, I want to remember her the way I remember her. He's very sweet man. And I said, I get that. because I was with her every second up until her last breath. I had a hard time looking at her pictures and video at all. She'd kind of become a shell of herself. And I don't know if I mentioned this on the other videos, but I like wouldn't leave her side. And I swear I felt like I heard her say, "I'm cold." And so I got up to move the heater. And the second that I got up to move the heater, she reached out to Alder and took her last breath. She looked him right in the eyes and he held her hand. For not in that minute so much, but like there were definitely moments where I was angry because I was just like, are you kidding me? I sat with her this whole time and he gets her last breath. I felt like my mom when like, my dad was never around and like when he was, I was like, don't leave, I love you. And my mom's like, I'm here all the time. How come I don't get that, Because I think that abandonment is like, I don't know when I would see him again. I took for granted that I'd see my mom all the time. And Alder was going through a lot of shadow and dark night of the soul stuff while she was sick, and I kept saying to him, you may want to spend more time with her. You may want to spend more time with her. I even offered to like have him drop me off downtown. I said, if you want to spend some time with her, I said, you can drop me off downtown and I'll spend the day. I'll just do whatever. I said, you can hang out with Bubba. I said, I feel like she really wanted that. I could tell, and I kept saying it to him. So I think towards the end, I think he felt, I think in his mind, because I caught him a few times, like having like that regret. Like I just can feel it, as an empath. Like I just could feel how he was just like, I can't believe I wasn't here. Even like our last Christmas, he wasn't here. And he didn't have a good Christmas either. He was with his family and his closest family member got really sick, like had to go to the hospital kind of sick. And they have health issues and stuff. And so, I mean, they were meant to be who they're meant to be, but it's just interesting, like Bubba and I had an awesome Christmas. Like I didn't know that he was going through that, it's just very interesting. But the last Christmas we were together was in the cabin. And Christmas Eve was really magical. Christmas Day was not good. He and I had a huge blowout, but Christmas Eve was really magical. And I feel like Bubba had that, But it's just so interesting, just like watching like how this has all been unfolding so beautifully. Like, it makes me realize like, I just really want to tell you guys like, life is really short and we really don't know. My mom has spent her life saying to all of us, life is short, you never know. The next day is not promised to us. She would say that all the time. All the time. And then it's ironic because I feel like her time with me, I kept trying to tell her for years that if she didn't change or at least try and, accept me, the change part I knew was probably not going to happen, but I was at least trying to get us to a point where even when we didn't agree with something, we would still talk about things, or I would try and, give her more insight into something to help her understand it. But, this was different, and I knew in the end it was going to come down to our belief systems. I knew it. I knew it. And she knew it too. So no, I wasn't going to leave Baba, who's my familiar, my best friend, my watcher. I mean, she was everything to me. So yeah, there was no, I'd always been the outsider, the black sheep. Like, I feel like my mom, I'm like, I know she knows now and she's grateful, but like, I don't know if my family will ever understand what a gift I actually gave my mom and the family, that they can have their own little morning mama, everybody's gonna, in her little log cabin in the South. Like she had this whole narrative of herself, which is fine, totally tied into past life stuff. There was just so much. And I think my mom deep down knew that, like, in another life, I was her mom. And it felt like that a lot of times in a lot of ways. So, Baba was my mom, my sister, my friend, like my soulmate, my forever teacher. And it didn't dawn on me until today that she was saying from the beginning she was Sherwood. And then she went into a body, into a cat body. That's the avatar she chose. I don't know where it was. I mean, she was so pretty and in such good condition and clean and everything. It's like, I mean, they put signs up when I found her. They were like, no, please take her. They're like, whoever had her doesn't want her anymore. So I'm like, I don't know what she did to make them not want her, whether she kept escaping or, whatever it was. Sometimes when you lose a pet or whatever, they run away. It's not that they didn't love you. It's like maybe they were only meant to work with you for so long. Like Bubba's probably in another person or another animal somewhere else doing the same thing for me that, for someone else. There's no way I could have got through all this without her. And then even Alder, for several years, Alder's like, oh, she hates me, but she didn't hate Alder. She didn't like this shadow that like was encompassing him and taking him over. She was just like, no, like she would hiss at him and she'd be like, don't touch me with those fucking shadowy, hands. Like that's how she always kind of, like she was dealing with enough of my shit and her own shit. She was just like, don't bring, because between the three of us, his shadow is like much greater than ours. Like, I mean, whatever, and that makes him such a warrior. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you have to be one hell of a warrior to battle something that deep and dark. I mean, I told him that too. I was like, I don't think you realize like how powerful you really are. And I had to learn how to control my shadow as well without him or Baba there, even though Baba, is always with me. And so, I've been going through my own stuff. It's just been so deep and so real. And so, yeah, now we're moving to this property. I don't know. I feel like it's a layover. I really do. Because although I said that about this place and we've been here almost a year. So I don't know. We're literally moving like a month shy of a year. But the other property, it's just like we're close to the freeway now, but well, excuse me, no, let me take that back. We're close to a highway, a rural highway. A rural highway and a freeway are completely different. So we're off a rural highway. So at night, it's not too bad because, we're on the peninsula. So it's like there's only one way in and one way out on this area where we are, So it's like, you know, most people are either passing through or they're going to do deliveries or they're going to work or whatever. So at nighttime, it gets a little more quiet around here. But where we're moving to is close to the other property that he wanted us to live on that I was like, dude, no, that's like right on the freeway. Like, I was like, I can't do that. It's now the one we're moving to is worse than the one that we didn't want to move to before. But sadly, that one's taken. And that's okay because truth is, like, if I was going to pay that much, I would go into the woods. Like, I would go to a place where I'd want to. That is the only one out of all of his properties that's like fully on grid and has its own yard. It's next to like a little stream. It's really cute. I mean, besides being on and the funny thing is now I wouldn't mind it as much because being on the freeway, I was concerned with Bubba because she's such a wanderer that I was like, I'm like, I don't think she would, but I was like, I don't know. And he's on that property a lot because he buys and trades and sells like big equipment, tiny homes, like cool vintage, like old, like gasoline tanks and like signs and things like that. Like he specializes in stuff like that. So he's got like these, big barn, like a hangar, So this other one that we're moving to is like right on the highway. The other one was at least above it. It was like up on a hill, but it was like, I could throw a rock at a fucking car going by. This one is right on the level of it. And when we were looking at it, I was like, the first part we looked at, I was like, no, no. He's like, no, 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 no. He's like, no, I know I had said this. He's like, but I have a different idea. So then he started showing me around. I'm like, I didn't even know he had owned like this whole area. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you owned that too. And he's like, yeah. And so then he brought us to this one area, and I saw the most beautiful, precious bird bath, like one of the cutest bird baths I've ever seen in my life. It was old. It was so cute. It looked like a flower. It was metal. It's probably like from the 60s or something, but it was so cute. And I just loved it. It was like it had a green base and like a yellow top, like almost like a, I love sunflowers, those who know me. And anyway, I just got this second I looked at it, I was like, oh, I love that bird bath. And he's like, he goes, I took that from the property that you're living on now. I'm like, oh, that makes sense because I know that the women that lived here, like I can feel the three generations, like the family, like I can feel like that they like me here, that they like my energy and stuff and the healing energy that I brought. So I felt like that was a sign from her, like a wink, wink, like it's not perfect, but take it. And then I saw another spot that I was like, ooh, this is really pretty. He's like, no, no, not right here. And I was like, oh. And then I could see like this old, like, another like kind of like a kind of an airplane hangar, but the other one was like a barn one at the other property. This one was like one of those metal ones, like kind of looks like a rainbow. And I see just a bunch of stuff and I was like, oh God. And so he starts taking us that way. But when we came around the corner, I'm like, oh, like, this is kind of cute. He's like, yeah, he goes, this is the inlet to the sea. And then I looked and I was like, oh my gosh. And he goes, yeah, it's just low right now. He's like, but once the rains pick up and stuff over the spring, he's like, it'll probably, and he's like, the mountains melt. And then I turned around and I was like, oh my God, we were like right below the mountains. So it sucks because we're like right off like the freeway, but it's beautiful. So he said, and we're on like, I don't know if it was like an old house that they built or something, but it definitely gives me the creeps. The second we fucking got there, I was like, oh my gosh. I go, I don't have a good vibe about this place. And then I walked through this one area and I'm like, oh, and I just felt like this black go through me. And I was like, oh, I'm like, somebody was stabbed here. And he's like, what? I go, yeah. I go, I feel like the 40s. I'm like, I don't know what's going on in the 60s. And then I was like, oh, dude, no, no. I'm like, dude, a lot of people died here. I'm like, a lot of people died here. I don't know what happened. I'm like, but something happened here. And then like later, our landlord, I said, do you know anything about like what's happened around here? And he's like, oh yeah, there was an accident. And I go, no, I know you told me about the one a few weeks ago. He goes, no, 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 no. He's like, no, he's like, there was like a tour bus like in the 40s. And I go, I looked at Alder because I just said like the 40s. And he goes, yeah, he said a truck was coming through and they didn't see them. And he's like, and it killed everybody in the bus. I'm like, oh my God. He goes, yeah, like 12 people. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, they're all here. I'm like, I go, I feel like I'm at a bus stop and there was a bus stop right in front of it. But I'm like, no, I mean, I feel like I'm at a bus stop with a shitload of fucking ghosts that are like waiting to go somewhere. Like they're all waiting at the fucking bus stop, waiting to go somewhere. And the bus stop wasn't there back then. You know what I mean? And I was like, this is really bizarre. So it was kind of interesting because Spirit's been having me watch these shows with Kim Russo, the medium, like the haunting of blah, 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 the unexplained zone. I've been watching, just all these things with like mediums. Spirit's been like really calling me to. So I said, oh, I asked Spirit, I said, bring us where we're needed most. And there's this feud going on between my landlord and his neighbor. And it's been going on for a long time because his neighbor's been there for many generations. And the people in the property that he bought next to it was in the same family for many generations. They all knew each other. But something had happened or she'd gotten sick and they had let the house go. And anyway, they finally just like gave it to him for like a really low price. That's what he does. He goes in and that's what he's doing on this property. That's why we have to move because he's done a lot of changes, repairs, and now he's getting ready to like redo the house so he can like flip it and sell it. So the one that we're going to be on is the one that he's been living on. I didn't realize it. But yeah, it's like, it's weird because that little corner right there feels good. That one little corner. And it's on the other side of this shed thing. Like the house, from the house, between the house and the land and the other house, there's like, it's fucking fucked up. Like it's so dark. It feels so heavy. I felt something trying to go home with us, and I was like, no. And I was like, but I will heal it. Like, I'm like, I will, you know. So I figured once I get there and set up, well, they'll probably show themselves to me anyway. But the one, I'm like, there's one that's really sad. And I go, and I don't know if, I said, I feel like he died here. I said, but he may have been killed here and taken somewhere else. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, he's showing me 1940. Like, I go, what you said about the bus in the 40s and the people dying, I go, that lines up. I said, but no, this is like, I go, I'm seeing like like The Outsiders, like when I'm thinking of like when he accidentally stabs, I go, I feel like it was a guy who was born in 1940, but I feel like he was in his 20s in the 60s in this area. And I think it was him and his best friend. And I think they were fighting, or I think the girl was with one guy, but then she broke up with him and got together with his best friend. And I think they were drunk, and he didn't know he knew. And and he's like looking at me like I'm crazy. I go, I know. I go, I go, it's like I'm watching a movie. I go, I can't explain my gifts all the time. So that's the one I want to research, because he said this lady up in the hill that he knows, he said that she told him the story about the bus. And she goes, oh yeah, it's kind of famous. Everybody kind of knows about it. So I want to do more research in this area, because I definitely came to this land to help heal that. Because when we first moved here, the very first night we were here, there was a black figure, very like super tall, like his head was, you know, it's an RV, but it was like his head was almost reaching the ceiling. And Alder's 6'2", and it's the same thing for him. Like his head, like basically like, you know, just like misses that. And that's what it felt like. He was like a really tall, lean man, and a black figure. And at first I was scared, just because I woke up, I felt like someone was in the house, and I woke up, and Alder was sleeping up against the, he was still there at the time, and he was sleeping up against the window, and I was, you know, on the outside, because I go to the bathroom sometimes in the middle of the night. I go to bed later than him, so that's just the way we do it. And this guy, this figure was like standing there, and at first I was like, but then like when he kind of like went like this, and I said, no, I'm like, it's okay, because then I realized, and I just introduced us and said, you know, who we were, because when we came to look at the property, I saw him. He walked out of the house, but he looked like him, but he walked through the door, so obviously I knew he was a ghost. And he was wearing kind of period clothes, and he was smoking a cigarette, and he was a tall, lean man. So it was kind of, or at least he was tall to my eye. I think somebody said he wasn't that tall, but um, anyway. But so, but then once that happened, it took me a few weeks, but then I started to feel fine. So I said to him, I'm like, well, I go, I think I have my work cut out for me on this one. So I've already been sending it good energy. I even said to our landlord in Alder, I said, I think I want to come over here before we fully move over, and like just like really clean up the area, like really clean it up. And I want to sit with spirit. I want to bring some crystals and bless it, and see if maybe I can get some of them to cross over before we even get there. But yeah, so that's interesting. Be careful what you wish for, right? But I know that that's part of my gift, and that's part of why I'm here. And, you know, it's like some people are in politics right now cleaning up the bullshit, you know what I mean? Cleaning up the sending love out, trying to bring love back into the situation. And some of us, like me, are dealing with energies that are here that other people can't see. But there's been this feud between him and his neighbor that's so bad that like they're in a lawsuit right now, and it's really fucked up, because my landlord is he's a really good guy. He's a really good, decent guy. And this guy is a very petty, angry, like I don't even feel like it's his. I feel like part of his anger and his rage is from the energy that's there, because you can feel it. You can feel the trapped spirits, you can feel the fear. And at least one person was murdered there. Like those other people may have died there, but I'm like, I would be shocked if no one was murdered there. And if not, then it was somebody on the bus that was connected. Maybe they murdered somebody and they were feeling guilt for something they did. I don't know. But either way, it was so strong, and that one was coming through the strongest. That was the one that I was like, I don't want to live here. I was like, I don't like, I'm like, this is a murderer. This is somebody who, but it was in a crime of passion and they were young. But anyway, so I'll keep you guys posted on all that. And Bubba, I would have been terrified with her living there. I would have been terrified. I, she's such a wanderer, you know. But I do feel like, maybe that's why I kept saying it's a layover, because we were here only 11 months, not a full year. And the next one, I kind of feel like it's the same thing. I feel like we're like meant to clean things up, because the other thing, part of the trade, he even said straight away, our landlord was like, I don't know, because he knows that like we've been separated and stuff, and he didn't know that we had had a conversation earlier that week about that we decided to move forward together. We're not sure how we're going to navigate our relationship yet, but we feel like we're meant to still like move together. And so he said straight out the gate, he's like, most of this is going to be a trade for Alder, He's like, because I need this done on a regular basis. I need this done on a regular basis. And he wanted him to maintain like the machines on the properties and stuff. And so he walked away for a while. He's like, I'll let you guys talk about it. And I was kind of nervous. I not nervous, like upset, just like, how is this going to go? No, like I had a feeling like whatever, because I do believe everything happens for a reason. So I was like, whatever's meant to be will be, period. I still have an ad out. We still have a week before he wanted us to get off the property, before the excavator guy is coming on the 1st. So I was like, we've got, still got time. And I knew that this was just like, if you don't find something, you can come here. But since it's a week away, he was like, if you guys don't find anything, he's like, I've been thinking about this. He's like, what if we do this deal, blah, blah, blah. He's like, this is my property. He had had one woman living there, a single, like off-grid, like, young, no animals, no drama, no whatever. And she was going to school over here. And so she came through him through somebody else. Almost all of the people that live on his properties came through somebody he knew. He doesn't like really seek out, except for his full grid spot. He seeks out for like the summers and stuff, because it's beautiful. It's like mountain views and everything. It's on the freeway, but if you're only staying for whatever, it's like the views are pretty breathtaking and magical and stuff. So and it's very private, and it's on like a little creek, and it's cute. But yeah, so there was just like this kind of, what is this? What is happening? But man, I looked at Alder and I was like, I was like, kind of like, I'm like, how are you doing? Because we just had this big conversation about us a few days before that. And, he's a triple Gemini, his moon's in Sag, and some things, he needs time to like digest it. I've learned that over the years. Geminis are very much in their head, and, in extracting that information, you have to be very gentle with them. So, like, without even skipping a beat, he's like, that's okay. And I said, really? I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. I don't want to think about, because the thing that's hard is on this property, we pay rent and it's a work trade, but it's partial trade. So we were paying money and doing a partial trade, because out of all of his properties, this was the best one. I mean, it doesn't have water, but it has electricity, and it's on 5 acres, and we're by ourselves, and we're like backed up to a forest. So, I mean, all we had to do was keep up with the landscaping, and it's 5 acres, but half of that is pasture. So he only had to mow the lawn, and I would like pick up, I would help him. Like I'd go through and pick up everything, because it gets really windy. You could probably hear it around here. And that was my part of the job, is I would stack, sticks and leaves, and I would do all that stuff. And then he would mow and he would trim. He would use the, meat trimmer thing. So now he's, we're doing a trade for the property that we're going to be on, which is a lot. And then this other property that we almost moved to. And so he just has to keep up with that. But the good news is that he's got multiple mowers. He's got a push mower and he's got a rider on all the properties. So he doesn't move them around. He just like, so it's perfect. So he's like, oh yeah, he's like, because I like the push mower. I've tried the rider mower. I thought I'd like it, but I did not like it because especially here, we're on hills and stuff. And like one time I was like, ah, like I was going down the hill and I was like, it's out of control. And he was laughing his ass off. But like you hit a rock and it's very rocky over here. You know, we're by the coast. So it's like, it's just not your regular grass. I thought it was going to be like when I grew up in the suburbs and I got to ride my dad's John Deere. Not the same. Not the same. Not the same. It was too nerve-wracking. I always felt like I was going to break it or, you know, the blades. I was like, he's like, well, you have to adjust the blades in this area. And I was like, it was just too much. It just didn't feel right. But my job here was good and it was needed. So same thing with this next one. I'm like, oh, I'm like, I'll have clippers. I'm like, he's got, you know, ideas of things he wants to build. He already got stuff to build this deck. And I was like, oh, I'm like, that'll be fun. And he's like, yeah. And so he's like, well, you guys think about it. So we went away and we thought about it. And when I messaged him back, I was like, we're going to take the deal. And he's like, yay. Like, he was like, I had a feeling. He's like, I feel like the three of us can really clean this place up. And I was like, yeah, because it's not like gross. It's just, you know, people who, this was a property that was loved at one point, very loved. But, you know, somebody gets sick and then there's only so much you can do and then they die and then, you know, things just start to fall apart. So, I even said to him, I'm like, I didn't know you owned that house too. I said, I always thought, well, they really keep that lawn really manicured. He goes, that's me. I'm like, oh, so it's actually kind of perfect. And then Alder said that he's like, he goes, I like the fact that I don't have to concern myself about rent on top of it. He's like, just knowing that that's fine. He's like, then all the money we make, we can just, you know, save. And so it's just really cool. So we feel really good about it. And I feel good about it. He feels good about it. And yeah, so I'll keep you guys posted. And it's cool because it's further away from where we are now, but it's better for him because he tends to work like the whole north side of the Olympic Peninsula. And when we were living in Squim, it was nice because it was like we were right in the middle. So he can go, you know, to one end of the peninsula and go to the other, you know. He was just more central, you know. So we're not central, but we're definitely closer, you know, where, you know, because the way that the peninsula is like you have to go up this way or go this, like go to the sound. Like he has clients in the sound too. So, you know, it's just, it's not so easy to get to certain areas, you know. It could tack on another hour on your trip, you know, round trip, you know, from going both ways. It could tack another hour, another half an hour each way. That's a lot, you know. It takes from your energy and it takes from your time. And his regular customers, he doesn't like to charge them for those kind of things. But anyway, so we'll see what happens. We may be there for a month. We may be there for a year. I have no idea what's going to happen. I can't imagine that we'd be there very long, but you never know. You never know, honestly. And it's kind of interesting because it's close to these places that I've been wanting to investigate and like kind of check out. So, you know. And now when I have my days when I'm having rough days, I used to do this for Bubba. You guys remember my videos. Now that I'm having my rough days, I just give her a good hug, a good squeeze. And I remember that I'm not alone and none of us are alone. But call out to your spirit guides and say that, you know, like maybe you're ready for an animal or maybe you need a good stuffy. Go out and find yourself a good stuffy that you can, you know, one that has substance. Because I mean, she's heavy. Like I was gonna say, when it's time, I hope he'll let me, but I feel like Alder needs some time with Baba Sherwood. I used to call her Baba Yaga the Great, whatever, but I think this is going to be Baba Sherwood. So until next time, you guys, take care of yourselves and each other and get through that, man, because whatever grief you're going through, pain, anger, suffering, dark night of the soul, shadow, the only way to get through it, to get to it, is to get through it. Spirit has said this to us so many times because it's so true. It's so true. And I'm going to keep on keeping on and, you know, yeah, just do the same. I love you. Take good care of yourself and each other, okay? But mostly take care of you first. You can't give oxygen to somebody else if you can't breathe. I love you.